April 4, 1922. A group of neighbors approached the Hinterkaifeck farmstead in rural Bavaria and found something that would disturb investigators for the next 100 years. 6 people had been killed with a mattock, but the cattle had been fed that morning. The fireplace was still warm. Someone had stayed after the murders. The farm sat about 70 kilometers north of Munich, isolated in the forests of Upper Bavaria near the village of Weidhofen. It belonged to Andreas Gruber, 63, who lived there with his wife Casilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, 35, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Casilia and 2-year-old Joseph. This family was not without secrets. Victoria's husband, Karl Gabriel, had died during World War I. The paternity of her infant son Joseph had become a matter of legal dispute and bitter local gossip. And Andreas Gruber himself had been prosecuted for incest with Victoria years earlier, a scandal the surrounding community had never fully buried. Weeks before the murders, Gruber told neighbors about something that had unnerved him. In fresh snow, he had found footprints leading from the edge of the forest directly to the farmhouse. He had followed the trail carefully. The tracks led inward, and they did not lead back out. Around the same time, a Munich newspaper appeared on the property that no one in the household had purchased or ordered. The keys to the farmhouse went missing without explanation, and at night, the family heard sounds moving through the attic directly above them. Gruber investigated the attic himself. He found nothing. The sounds continued. The family's previous maid had quit abruptly 6 months earlier. Telling people the farm made her uneasy in a way she could not clearly articulate. When Maria Baumgartner, 44, arrived at Hinterkaifeck on the afternoon of March 31, 1922, to begin her new position, she knew none of this. She would not survive the night. That evening, the killings began in the barn. Andreas Gruber was lured inside first. Then Casilia Gruber, then Victoria, then 7-year-old Casilia. Each brought in separately. Each struck multiple times with a mattock, a heavy iron farming tool with a metal pick used for breaking hard ground. There was no sign of struggle near the barn entrance. Whoever did this had worked in near silence. After the 4 barn victims were dead, the killer entered the farmhouse. 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his crib. Maria Baumgartner was killed in her room. She had arrived only hours before and had no part in whatever dispute drove these murders. And 7-year-old Casilia had not died instantly. She had torn out clumps of her own hair. Then the killer stayed. For 4 days after the murders, smoke continued rising from the farmhouse chimney. The cattle were fed. Food was consumed from the kitchen. A neighbor's child came to the farm and was sent away at the door. From the road, Hinterkaifeck looked like a functioning household, occupied, ordinary, undisturbed. When neighbors finally entered on April 4th and found the bodies, Munich's criminal police assumed control. Forensic pathologist George Aumiller examined each victim and documented the wound patterns with careful precision. His analysis determined that a single right-handed attacker had delivered all the fatal blows, someone with physical strength, composure, and complete control of the scene from beginning to end. No murder weapon was recovered from the property. No usable fingerprints were matched to a suspect. No witnesses came forward. What the evidence consistently demonstrated was a killer who had not panicked, not rushed, and not fled, someone familiar enough with the farm to manage it convincingly for 4 days after committing 6 murders inside it. Munich police worked through more than 100 suspects over the years that followed. The list included farmhands, travelers through the region, and local men with documented financial grievances against Andreas Gruber. Every lead collapsed before reaching a prosecution. The investigation produced no arrests and no formal charges against anyone. But one name kept returning under sustained scrutiny: Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighboring farmer with long ties to the Gruber family. He had been in a relationship with Victoria Gabriel. He had paid child support for Joseph for a period before contesting paternity. The dispute over that child had cost him money and damaged his standing in the community. On April 4, 1922, Schlittenbauer was part of the group that approached Hinterkaifeck. Multiple witnesses later stated he pushed ahead of the others and led them directly to the exact spot in the barn where the 4 bodies had been concealed beneath piled hay. He did not hesitate. He did not search the space. He walked straight to them, without being told where to look. Investigators mapped his motives carefully. The paternity dispute over Joseph had escalated into public legal proceedings. Documented financial disagreements with Andreas Gruber had grown acrimonious, and the continued fallout from the earlier incest case had kept Schlittenbauer entangled in the Gruber family's affairs in ways that brought him ongoing cost and exposure with no resolution in sight. Despite the accumulating circumstantial weight, no prosecution was possible. The evidence against Schlittenbauer was behavioral and inferential, powerful by investigative standards, insufficient by legal ones. He continued living in the region without disruption. He died in 1941. No one with any connection to the events at Hinterkaifeck was ever brought before a court. In a final blow to any possibility of future forensic resolution, the skulls that George Aumüller had preserved for continued analysis were transferred to a Munich collection for further study. During the upheaval of World War II, they were lost, possibly destroyed outright. The physical evidence that might have matched a specific weapon or yielded biological material was gone permanently. In 2007, criminology students at the Fürstenfeldbruck Police Academy reopened the Hinterkaifeck file as a formal cold case training exercise, reviewing every surviving document and witness account. Their conclusion was unambiguous. Lorenz Schlittenbauer was the most probable perpetrator. His direct knowledge of precisely where the bodies had been concealed, they argued, was not something an innocent bystander could have possessed. The picture that accumulated across a century of analysis describes a single killer with intimate familiarity with the farm's layout and the family's daily routines, someone who had likely been occupying the attic for days before the evening of March 31, 1922. The footprints in the snow had led inward. Everything that followed confirms this person had never planned to leave in a hurry. The strongest conclusion the evidence supports. Lorenz Schlittenbauer killed 6 people at Hinterkaifeck to close a web of disputes that threatened his reputation, his finances, and his social standing, then remained for 4 days to control what would be discovered and when. The farmstead was demolished in 1923. A memorial marker stands today at the forest site where the buildings once were. If you've looked into this case before, tell us in the comments. Is there a suspect or angle you think investigators overlooked?